Hello and welcome to the sixth episode of Dice and Design. And today we're going to talk about injury, death, healing, and resurrection. So, once again, I'm joined by Tyler from the channel Flame Zombie. The link is in the description below. Hello, Tyler. How are you doing?
Hey, pretty good. Can't complain.
Yeah. So, injury, death, healing, and resurrection. Those are like big, almost like, is it four topics that we wrap into one? Or is it like really
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah.
they're all kind of linked together. It's about
Mhm.
like how resilient you are in the game. All the character, like, do you want to get this heroic feel where you're like where you don't have to fear anything, that you're immune to everything? You want to go like more cinematic vibe where you can get beaten down a lot, but then you in the next scene you're good enough again to go? Or do you want to have like a more simulationist approach where injury takes a long time to heal? Like what if you break your arm? How long will this character be out of action? Do you keep on going? What do you sit on there? I know you're like a Pathfinder player, mostly, I guess. Is
Mhm.
that fair to say? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us
Um.
about how you deal with the HP injuries and
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah. Let's start by tackling HP, and let's not not linger on that for too long.
Yeah.
But uh, that is a topic in and of itself. Uh, yeah. Hey, Brian. Oh.
And the Dark of Maya. Good evening.
hmm Um.
So yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's fair to start with HP because like most people, that's what they're used to. You know,
Yeah.
like we always have to acknowledge like this kind of like D&D kind of system or
Yeah. Yeah. And
D&D adjacent.
it's gotten way bigger than D&D at this point because if
Hmm.
anybody's coming to tabletop RPGs from video games, which I would say the vast majority of people are at this point,
Yeah.
then they're used to hit points as a concept. So it's sort of the baseline, what are hit points, and then we can compare some of the oddball systems out there. So the way I handle hit points, I mean, talking about the most recent edition of D&D 5e, pretty much everything is when you get to 0, you're unconscious. But in 5e, they switch the death mechanic to something that is just very. They've lightened the rules. You don't need to go, oh, I need to hit minus my constitution score in order to die.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, you're doing a little bit less math, I guess. But now, like, a giant can walk over to you and they can step on your skull and that you have moved your dying counter one over to the left, and it's like, huh?
Yeah.
So
Technically, that'd be two over to the left, but
yeah, yeah, but it creates this
if you're
weird,
unconscious, it'd be a critical. Yeah, but
yeah,
and that's the thing too. There's always something wonky about like getting into 0 HP in D&D.
Mhm.
At some point, it
Yeah,
was like, oh, at -10 you're gonna die, and then you're
mhm.
gonna start like losing one point every round. At some point, it was like minus your constitution score. A lot of it, like people were homebrew that. Some people would just say like, no, at 0 you're dead, and that's over. There was
Yep.
always something a bit wonky about that.
And then I think the big thing is, people don't even really agree on what exactly hit points are because
Yep.
most games don't explain what they are in a role playing context. They just explain, well, when this number gets to 0, you're dead, or you're unconscious, and then you start dying, and then you're dead. But they don't explain what it is. Is it fatigue and stamina? Because if it's fatigue and stamina, I can kind of see that because most D20 systems don't also have a stamina system, and Constitution, which is based on hit points, is also an indication of how resilient you are in endurance and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So there's that, but then there's also the, okay, well, can you get, if you work it as just hit points, like David Guile here says, mechanically, yes, that's true. They must be meat points due to healing
Yep.
magic. But when you run it that way, you get into these goofy things where a guy, runs up to you with a sword and goes, psh, 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 and you've been hit by a sword like 17 times. I'm not dead yet. Black Knight, Monty Python.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's something I wanted to say about it because, like, you say like, oh, most games don't really define what HP is. Like, they're hit point. They're not like wound point. They're not health per se. They're not health point. They're hit point. So what does that even mean? Like, oh, how many times you can get hit before dying? Like, how well you can get hit? And there's something like about like, yeah, are they meat point, like because of healing magic, also because of falling damage. If if you fall or stuff like that, you're gonna lose HP. And there's also no mechanic. Like if they say, oh, just like a stamina, what if I run 3 miles? Do I lose any point there? No, you don't. Clearly I would lose some stamina, I would get tired and stuff like that. Then if I run 3 miles and go fight somebody, I wouldn't be fresh to fight him. But now there's nothing there. And there's also like the wonkiness, and because like David Guile say here as well, there's something wonky about going to 0 HP and just immediately dying or falling unconscious. And something wonky in the sense that I don't know that if that's what he meant, but I think the way I read that is like you're perfectly functional until 0 hit point, and then you're unconscious. There's no like gradation, there's no like death spiral. It's just like it's a binary. Like you can be 1 hit point, you're fine. And that become even more wonky in game like 5e when you have like those death saving throw, that roll. I forgot how they call them suddenly.
Yeah.
Because if you succeed 3 before you fail 3, you get back up at 1 HP. So now you're where you were dying there, and you're just back up ready to be fully functional until you get hit again. Yeah. So there is something with HP that it kind of abstract a few things, not in a clear manner. Like it wrapped a few concepts into one in a manner that's not clearly delineated.
Yeah, and some games try to fix this. Like in 3rd edition, they tried to introduce like the like fatigue rules, where it's like, okay, you've been on a long march, a long hurried march all day, and you're carrying a ton of stuff. Well, okay, now you're going to need to be making either skill checks or fortitude saving throws, or you start taking non-lethal damage. So there we have, and the non-lethal damage is again a way we can convolute hit points, but specifically that is. So it's like, okay, there we've got some, but then that's not just any amount of stamina expenditure is hit points. It has to be like a pretty dire expenditure of hit points for it to be that. And then we get things like different feats that allow you to, okay, well, once you hit below 0 hit points, now like the Die Hard feat in 3.5 and Pathfinder, okay, you can keep functioning, but you can only take 1 action per turn, and you are still dying. You'll still bleed out eventually if nobody comes to help you.
Yeah.
So that kind of starts to tackle the problem, but there's still whether you're at 12 hit points or 500, you function exactly the same until you hit 0.
and there's this thing you say like oh, it needs to be like some kind of like serious damage for you. Like, oftentimes you say like, oh, I pricked my finger, I got a pepper cut, oh, lose 1 HP. With you, like significant enough. Like we all kind of like those little scratch, like all the time. I always got it full because like I'm always working in the woods. I'm always like full of little cuts and scratch.
Same.
But like, did I lose HP because of that? Like not really. Like I just like I don't even notice them sometimes. I just like later on like realize I'm bleeding somewhere. But
yeah,
and then at some point, like when your character got like over 100 HP, at some point, like does it become like silly if you just like if it represents like very meat point, like to use the term that David Guile was using, like you actually get hit, you actually get damage, then like you said, how often can you be hit by a sword or a dagger before you fucking die?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Cat killing wizard. That's a thing.
You have the 2 wizards with their cat familiars, just like seeing which cat gets there first to kill the other guy. I remember that. It was.
But it was a thing. Like the wizard would have like 1d4 it die, and which I think is correct. But then the cats could do like 1d2 on bite and 1/1 on, which is not correct because it should be the other way around.
Yeah. But yeah, and you can make some, because it is an abstraction, you could go, oh, you're not feeling the effects of lower hit points because of adrenaline, and you're if you like look at like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's won fights with both of his hands broken, and he's gone, I kind of realized there was something wrong, but I mean, it wasn't enough to change how I fought. I was still throwing punches with broken hands. It was just the next day. but that's what's missing. There's, especially in 5e, you take a nap and all of a sudden all your, sword wounds, you've been burnt to a crisp and you're perfectly fine. That's one of my biggest issues of 5e is just, hey, and if they explained it as like the characters are super powerful, they're inherently magical, even if you're picking just a mundane fighter, there's some magic that's coursing through the world that is healing them. Okay, sure, but they don't explain that. They just, yeah, you sleep and all of a sudden you're like lethal gunshot wound to the stomach is just
yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, I know some system make a distinction between like, oh, you can heal, like after a fight, you can do first aid, you can heal wounds that have been taken in this fight. If you don't deal with it right away, then the wound become harder to take care of later on. The wound kind of settle down. I think that does fix, because like you said, like, yeah, maybe you could excuse like, yeah, I'm on adrenaline, I don't feel this, I don't get in there because and there's all those stories like people like got stabbed 3 times and keep fighting and kill the other guy and then die. We have like plenty of those stories historically, but then he died. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't go on for another fight like a few hours later or after a nap.
And two, they generally don't represent things like infection, wounds from infection, and that would be something that makes a cleric way more interesting than just, oh, I pump hit points into the guy at every combat or at the end of every combat. Now it's okay, well, I don't just need you to heal my physical injuries. I need I'm diseased, I need that. And maybe your cleric does or doesn't know how to fix that. Maybe you have to go to a druid or just an apothecary that's going to give you some plants that will cure you. Think of like a cat. Yeah, a cat scratch isn't going to be, it probably shouldn't be damaging enough to kill you outright, but might have a high chance of giving you, toxoplasmosis.
Cat scratch fever. Yeah. Our men say, I have no problem with hit points to track when you fall unconscious or die. What is weird is like that you get more and more in them at a crazy rate as you level up. And yeah, that's what we thought as well, because like and this is something, when you look at people's homebrew, this is something that is always kind of an issue. People say, oh, after you level up to a certain extent, you just get 1 per level, or you just get your constitution bonus, or you're just like, it's always something that people have been trying to fix for a very long time. Because there's nothing more boring in combat, in my opinion. Your opinion might differ. You're welcome to tell me so. Then when you just have like 2 big bag of hit point chipping it away at each other.
Yeah. Especially it can be helped. There's one exception, and the exception is that you intended that to be that. Right. Yeah. I don't know if another MMA reference, Don Fry versus, I forget his competitor's name, but they basically, all of the fights scheduled for that night had been terrible, like 1 minute long, nothing burger fights. So they agreed before the match that they would both just go into the center of the ring, tie up, and just throw unprotected right hands at each other. And for like a minute straight, they're just eating shots over and over and over again. So if it's in the flavor, and if you're role playing it, not just going, I attack, oh, I take 5% of my max hit points, oh, he attacks, who's a 5% of my max hit, back and forth for like 12 rounds, yeah, that's obnoxious.
But and also,
unfortunately, that's usually how it goes. Yeah.
When you take the MMA example, though, this is like a unarmed fight. That's a big difference as well. You I guess like those fight, as soon as you put weapon in play, it should go pretty fast. There's not much thing that can survive like a few axe strike.
Yeah, I mean, in the event though that it's like you're fighting a dragon or something, like a dragon should be a big bag of hit points in my opinion. Or and there's always going to be the argument of, do you give something more hit points or do you make something harder to damage in the first place?
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
I always prefer when something is harder to hit, or maybe there's always also the question like, should armor give like damage resistance instead of like make something harder to it? That's also part of the question. what I like when somebody like is harder to hit based on its skill, and when armor create like damage reduction, if you have way to set yourself up to bypass the armor. That's always something that bothers me. Like they always say that the dagger is a shit weapon. Like, the dagger is probably the weapon that killed the most knight. Because like they would made to find the niche, and like people would wrestle the guy down, and then and I think this is often like not taken into account. But yeah, there you go. Is that a ball? What is that? I couldn't see because of the green screen.
Oh yeah, here, let me hold it in front of me. It's World War One.
Oh yeah, bayonet.
French bayonet.
Yeah,
but it's based on yeah. Because they have the sword bayonets designs, but it's just a spike. It can only thrust. It's very similar to like stiletto daggers of the period.
Yeah, but like for a dragon, I think like the fight should be that. The fight should not be chipping away hit point, which is boring. Should be like trying to position yourself and create a situation where you can get a hit that does substantial damage. And I think this is often something that is not taken into account enough. Very few game does that.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. Because I'm playing games with hit points, typically, I just sort of flavor the hit point loss as you're getting into a better position. You're getting into, you are tiring out the opponent until they can't defend themselves for that one blow that does it all. Maybe occasionally, somebody just lost half of their hit points in a single hit. That can be them actually getting cut with the sword.
That's funny because like I reviewed on this channel like the Dark Soul RPG, which is based on 5e, but they rename HP, or they replace, because they have a slightly different system, by position. That's what they called it. They say it's your position, and you have like a very limited amount that is your base position. But at the start of every fight, you roll a pool of position, which act basically like temporary hit point that are just for that fight. And at the end of the fight, you're gonna either go back to your base position or to your current position, depending. You know what I mean? It's So you always like get this those. Yeah. They were trying to get. I think that was a fair way to do it. A good idea. One of the
because like Alice here says, characters should get a kind of defense bonus based on level. So level 5 fighter is harder to hit than a level 1 fighter. Armor should give DR. Yeah, that's kind of how you have to flavor a fighter getting more hit points than, say, a wizard, right? Is that the only logical explanation, right? Maybe the monk, right? Where the monk used to be the only class that gets hit points all the way to level 10 back in AD&D. Because you're getting like the flavor of like the body conditioning stuff. But am I expected to believe everyone who's not a wizard is just, going out there getting punched in the stomach, and all of their downtime for fun? It kind of stops making sense. So it would only make sense that, it overlaps with AC, and it overlaps with damage resistance, and it overlaps with all of these different subsystems that, it really should just be called something different. Yeah, like position. I like position. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it. Well, but then again, it come with like then you won't lose position by falling. Like fall damage and stuff like that. Like you kind of need like And I think a lot of it, like this HP and AC kind of thing, is a leftover from the war game day, where
especially AC,
where you would have like units. And it didn't really matter the individual stat of like one character, like it's just like the unit as a whole.
Yeah, because you deal 15 damage, you took out 15 of the 20 units that the guy had. So, or 15 of the 20 men in that one unit. So that's totally believable, right?
Yeah. And because now, like when it's transferred to RPG, like Guardian of the Rune is absolutely right there. There's like AC is an abstraction, HP is an abstraction, and it's the delineation between the two is not clear. When you try to role play around that, exactly.
And then the crap phone says it gets complicated because armor damage resistance varies by circumstance. Yeah, and then that runs into it too, because damage resistance is a very clear thing that means one thing, really. And so so it's like, okay, well, we can't have HP or AC as damage resistance, because then what is damage resistance?
Yeah. And that there's always like a trade-off to do. If you want your system to be simple, to be light, to be fast, you do have to make abstraction.
Yes, that's just what I was about to say.
But when you go with too much abstraction, at some point, like it can get confusing and become a bit silly, and it kind of harm in the role play, because now, like, you always like see those people like, oh, you hit with the sword for 7 hit point, oh, you get slashed on your arm and the blush, like people try to make description of what's happening, but then like you hit you for 7 hit point and you got like 130. So how deep is the cut? It's just a scratch, like, we're back to the Monty Python clip,
Yeah.
Scratch.
But yeah, I was going to say that because when you abstract things, you really have to have like a solid session 0 and go, okay, here's what hit points are going to mean in our game, right? Here's what I generally just understand that hit points are a huge abstraction, so I may describe you losing hit points in various ways. It doesn't mean you're literally drawing blood or getting a bone crushed or something like that. It might mean the guy is, just bumping your sword with his to get it out of the way, and now he's lining up his own cut. That's, you've lost HP now, and you've got to recover from that, because now you're having to spend a bunch of energy to get your blade all the way back online to make that deflection.
Yeah, I think that's
on the other hand,
in session 0. It's a good idea. I never thought of that.
Yeah. That way people aren't confused when I go, like, when you say something like, you're caught in a struggle and you're spending a lot of energy, take 12 damage. They're like, huh, what? But I haven't been hit. And you don't have to have that discussion in the middle of the game. But on the other hand, like you said, if you do have very clear delineations, you get into things like with Shadowrun, where roll to hit the guy. Okay, now he's gonna roll to dodge because he's actively trying to dodge out of the way. Okay, you managed to hit him. Okay, so now I need his armor has to roll to see if it overcomes his armor piercing points. And that's how Shadowrun does it. Yeah, the hit points are static. And then, okay, now you've penetrated the armor. Now whatever damage goes to so it's just like, what's supposed to be I point a gun at somebody and go bang becomes I point the gun at somebody, bang, and then like the game freezes. The computer is like trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that's something, that's a problem as well. Like, you want to keep the flow going, There's always like this thing when you try to be too realistic, you're gonna lose like the flow of the game at some point. It's a tough balance to figure out. If we try to step away a bit from specifically at point,
I think
let's go back to like and I think you brought a very good idea. Like, try to discuss with your player about like how you interpret HP in your game during session 0. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and one last thing before we move on, one of my players actually mentioned something interesting, which is that HP may be different for the different classes and archetypes, right? Maybe the fighter, maybe the huge barbarian is just tanking the hits, right? Or maybe the rogue, their HP is like almost a luck meter, right? Like if you know the Uncharted series, the way that the health is flavored there, you're not being shot at multiple times, literally, which is what the game shows, obviously, in the health bar. It's only the last shot is what actually kills you. So the flavor is that, you get shot once, you're dead. All the rest are just, you're burning through this sort of intangible luck.
Do you think this can become like, because if you do that for the enemy as well, does that become like unsatisfying for the player at some point?
I don't personally do that, but I thought it was an interesting idea, because I haven't.
I think the player want to feel like if they hit, that they hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's
and that can be a frustration with just jacking the AC way up, where it can feel like, okay, I've done 12 rounds of nothing now, what? And if they lose that encounter, they'll be going like, was it even possible for me to hit the dude? Like, what? So that's there's pitfalls with doing any of it. So just things to think about.
If you want to go this way, like, oh, you're gonna get killed in one hit, but when you chip down the HP, then they're just gonna be like not really hit. You're gonna exhaust the guy and stuff like that. What you could do is always have your player roll the to hit and the damage at the same time. As a GM, you're the only one know if they hit and got away some HP, or so you keep like the mystery. Like, I don't know, maybe like you didn't roll good enough, so.
And maybe with the adrenaline, maybe your players don't know how low on health they are. Maybe they need somebody with medical skill to come over and be like, geez, dude, you're bleeding like crazy. Because a lot of times, especially if it's a sharp knife and you're in a fight, you'll go, oh, crap, I'm bleeding everywhere. How long's that been going on?
Yeah. So I want to talk about, let's bring you back a bit and talk about tone. Because, like, I think the wound or injury system is something that is so impactful, and how much you heal and how fast you heal is so impactful on the tone of your game. If you want to go like full heroic, if you want to do like the mod core, if you want to do like a cinematic kind of thing, there's always going to be like this thing, like I mentioned earlier in the intro, you look at movie, people will get beat down a lot and then they struggle, then a few scenes later they're fine, but it's to keep the narration going, and some games do that fairly well by allowing you to recoup HP pretty soon. Some game want to make you feel like you're a very tough guy that can be defeated. They give you a lot of HP. I like games where life is cheap and you die easy. That's the tone I'm going for.
Yeah. So if you would never play 5e rules as written, right?
No.
Because that's like extreme health blow, right? And that's but that's not the tone, right? You can't, and you see there's sort of these people that they try to cram the 5e square into every round hole, and when people try to run like a more grim grounded fantasy in 5e, it just doesn't work, because it's like, unless you wanted to just inflate the damage numbers way high too, at which point you're just kind of doing extra math for what a grittier game system could service for. So
like I wanted to say that, like Rick still there saying, like, some people don't even narrate loss of HP until like actual damage, until you at least down half. And in 4th edition, there was like this bloodied mechanic that was like, once you would pass half, then there was like some effect that they get into play. So, and I think that's maybe one thing that 4th edition got right.
I actually take at least the mechanic of, you can tell somebody's injured. Like, I'm not going to give you the hit points of the monster, but I'll tell you, they're bleeding. You've landed a blow that's like actually hurting them. And that's my in flavor. I don't have to yell a bunch of mechanics at you. They're at half health. You just know they're at half health when I say, they're looking rough. They're looking, and you don't have to say, they're bloodied every single time, because then it gets bland. But he
got bloodied.
Yeah.
What I was about to say, tone. So, which one would you say, like a game like Pathfinder would fit, like the heroic kind of tone, because you get like a lot of HP and stuff like that?
It's lots of HP, but also lots of damage. So I want to say Pathfinder for Resurrection, because it's pretty easy to die in Pathfinder.
You can get healed pretty fast as well.
But you can get resurrected or healed just as easily as you can die by the time you're like 5th or 6th level. So the tone of Pathfinder can be very strange, and part of that is because it's a 12-year-old game that had so many different writers on it at varying points. So the tone varies from the modern Tea Party style, no one touched me, no one hurt me DM, to more old school, if he dies, he dies. So, like, even the first module for 2nd edition, it's a very lethal module. And level 1, yeah, you're not getting resurrected. So yeah, it's
But now, like you have to ask consent for death.
yeah.
But
There
like
can be
one I like a lot is Forbidden Land, where the damage you take is damage to your stat. So now, first you cannot take that much because like if your stat like you have like it's a dice pool system, and for those that are not familiar, maybe you have like 3 dice for your strength, and if it goes to 0, you're incapacitated. So it doesn't take much to get you down. And if you take 1 damage, if you start at 3, you take 1 damage. Well, now you only have 2 dice to roll for your strength, and you got dice that come from skill and dice that come from gear as well. So you're gonna roll like a few more dice. So it's not like a complete death spiral, but I think that's they found a nice middle ground there where it feel like it's deadly. It feel like you cannot take that much punishment, and that doesn't change that much as you level up. So maybe sometime your stats gonna go up a bit, but it's gonna go up by 1 point, maybe 2 point, and it feel like it does have an impact when you get injured because you lose those dice. But it's also not like a full-on death spiral where the first one to get damaged is doomed, because that's also another problem that some games have. What else? What other system you find that do something interesting with this kind of like getting a tone of getting injured? And
I'm trying to think. Hackmaster has a pretty detailed injuries, and they've got, for their crits, they have all sorts of specific locations that you get crit on, so it might not kill you, but you might lose a hand. You might, and then that I really like it when somebody can keep playing a character. Hitting 0 hit points doesn't mean oh, you're dead, make a new character. Because then you get into the like, okay, how often are we making characters here? In Hackmaster, it's a pain to make a character. So, well, not necessarily a pain, but it takes a long time, right? So if you're dying every other session, eventually your player's going to go like, I don't know, I don't really want to make another character. I'm just not going to play anymore. But when hitting 0 hit points means something like, and then players never get attached to their characters either, because they're just like, oh, whatever, he's just going to die. So, yep, I walk forward. And then, so if it's too lethal, you run into those issues. So I like if it's, with Hackmaster, losing a combat means, oh, I've lost a hand. What does that mean for a fighter now? Now I've got to learn how to, well, not only fight with only one weapon, I've got to learn to fight with my offhand, maybe. And it changes the character, right? It invests you more into the character rather than dying. You get totally uninvested in the character.
Do you have like a recommendation for David on that one?
I was thinking about it, but I don't.
I don't on top of my head. I've seen like some homebrew doing it, but
yeah, not a D&D like game. Really only percentile and dice pool games that I can think of that have static hit points. And even then, like Shadowrun has pretty much static hit points. You really have to work to gain that 1 or 2 extra boxes in the game. But I sort of like that from the tonal perspective as well. Where you do feel like you can walk into a room full of bad guys, gun them all down and walk out potentially unscathed, if not at least alive. But there's always that nagging feeling in the back of your head where it's like, if I catch a stray bullet, that is it, right? So it's like you don't just auto go to, oh, we'll just go in guns blazing, we'll just go in with the combat, which is what systems like 5e, where the health is too high, lead you to doing, where you just go, combat's the answer, because we're going to have so long to realize, we should run away. Whereas if the health is way more condensed, either because the damage is way higher or because the health points are way lower.
That's what Arnmen say, like about Arn Master, is full detail injury. Is that what you were playing to? And weeks of recovery. It makes fighting to solve problems, something to think twice about. That's something I like. Exactly. I want the player, like, and that's something, like you said, something in 5e. You say, oh, there's a monster. Why are we gonna fight it? That's what we're there for. No, you should think about it. Can you go around it? Can you? because
And
there's no consequence, and that's a big thing with that. And that's why I think that's the reason why we wrap all those four together, is like it's the consequence
yeah,
of getting damage. They
yeah,
need to be. And yeah, there's like and that's something also like Fori got right with, for some tone with the minion mechanics, where you have like those mook that have one
yes,
HP. You hit them once, they're dead. You move on.
yeah,
So you can have like
yeah,
this feeling of like, I'm
yeah.
gonna mow down a bunch of enemies. It's not very what I like. Like I often like say, like I don't like a modern ARPG on the computer. I like the first Diablo, but when you start playing like a Diablo 2 or 3 or like Path of Exile, you fucking kill like 1,000 enemies in
You
like
can't even tell what's
in
going on, and
an hour,
you just
kind of thing, talking about. But it means like all those death and all those enemies are meaningless. They're just like you
Mm,
just like go around and butcher them. When you would play the first Diablo, you would have to pull the enemy one by one. You have to think, like try to funnel them in the door and stuff like
mm,
that. Sometimes if you were like, surrounded, you had to run, and that's much more something that's much more like a tone that I'm into. But if you are into this power fantasy that I want to be the badass that can kill like 10,000 men in
yeah.
a single
Or
fight.
another example, from video games, on the opposite end of the spectrum, NPCs being super killable, right?
Yep.
People will they won't make their NPCs unkillable because they kind of know that that's right, but they'll just give them a ton of HP so they can't possibly die. And I'm like, why would you do that? Why not make the incredibly wealthy shopkeeper that's been kidnapped by, who knows what, make him have 8 hit points in a game where you're doing 50 damage in an attack? Now, maybe you don't have to worry about your own health as much. Yeah, you're the superhero, sure. But what does Superman have to? What are the most interesting parts about Superman? They aren't when he's in danger, in my opinion. They're when, yeah, he's got to make a choice. There's a building that's going to fall on this, child, and then
Yep.
there's, a tree that's going to go fall over on this old lady, and he can't be in two places at once. So that's where I think when you have the big hit points, you have to make the differences external rather than personal.
Yeah, but I still find like it takes away something from the game, like
It
this
does.
sense
It
of
makes it
danger.
different. Yeah, it's a totally different tone, right? When compared to the
Yep.
Punisher, where it's like, yeah, you could. The Punisher's barely a superhero. He turns the corner, somebody could just blow his head off with a shotgun.
Isn't like a guy with a gun? That's what he
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just for power. I got a bunch of guns.
I got a gun and I got some cool body armor.
Yeah.
And
The Hmm?
no, I was just gonna say, depending on the book you read, he's also
Oh yeah.
like cursed by death to live through insane circumstances. That could be a way you measure hit points. Every time you hit the zero, maybe you don't die, you get to keep playing the character, but now there's a consequence. You're owed something.
Well, that's also like talking about consequence. You mentioned a bit like the chart with the lingering injury and stuff like that, and that's something I think that I want to talk about, because like
Mm-hmm.
lingering injury, that's always something that I find interesting on paper, or not. Lingering injury, I like it. It's the
Mm-hmm.
damage location and those critical hit based on like it's always something I find interesting on paper,
Mm-hmm.
but I never saw somebody that did it in a way that felt good to me. You know what I mean?
I'm
Always
trying
like,
to.
oh yeah,
Uh, so the way I've done it is effectively, if you're not making a concerted effort to attack a particular part of the body, you're just hitting the torso. That's it. That way we don't have to go through this like, oh, okay, let's roll on the chart to see where you get hit. Let's roll damage, and it just adds an extra step. And what you end up with statistically is just a scattering of damage all over. Why didn't you just have one big ball of hit points at that point? When you're only interacting with the mechanic in a positive way every 5 combat encounters or so. But if you want, you can make a called shot, a concerted effort to, yeah, I'm going to try to punch him specifically in the head. I'm going to try to hit him specifically in one of his arms. And then now it creates a dynamic where the other guy can go, oh, my arm is injured. I'm going to try, I'm going to start fighting differently because my arm's injured. Which is
because
something we don't really,
like David say, yeah, like lingering injury are fine. Hit by location, I think, is more complicated and care to deal with, and I agree
yeah.
with that. Like that's something I always found like war fantasy might be the one that got the closest, because your hit
Mhm.
location is just like the inverse of your roll to it. So it's a
Mm.
percentage dice. You roll 2d10. Now, like the one that was used for the tens become the one for the units, and the one for the units
Yeah.
become the one for the 10. So it's only one roll, but it's still, as you refer to, a chart.
Yeah.
And some people like that. I find they slow down the game too much for the benefit that we gain from it.
Yeah.
But
When
your
you're
mileage may vary.
that's my thing, is I only want people referring to a chart like very rarely, every 10 rolls or so. When you're referring to the chart every roll, then and that's why I want to make it, you're targeting the arm, you either hit the arm or you don't. We don't need to look at the chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some things are easier to hit than others, some things are more difficult to hit than others. This way you can do things like, the Myers square, where he opens up, I'm going to attack him in the head. Maybe you don't hit him in the head, but now his guard's raised up, so now next turn you attack him in the legs and you have an easier chance at hitting him in the legs. So that's that was something that I wanted to represent with that I didn't think was represented well. And of course you could abstract that if it's just one big thing of hit points. You could just say, oh, that's cool role playing. That's good thinking. I'm going to give you a plus to hit on your next roll against the guy. You could absolutely do it without these mechanics, but
yeah. And Guardian of the Rune, they'll say like about the Warhammer Fantasy, wounds are in the single digit, but blocking and parrying keep you alive longer than the first level D&D character. Criticals are the main way you die, and that's something like Warhammer Fantasy is often like an example I take, because it's just like from the outset, it's very similar to D&D in the sense that it's kind of like late medieval fantasy, like early Renaissance, whatever. It doesn't make much difference for most people, but
it's a grab bag. It's
But the setting, the context is very similar. But if you go there and you play the game, they play very differently. And I think a big part of that is because Warhammer Fantasy has those lingering injury, can be much more deadly. Like it says, it's like, and that's gonna be the thing too. You're gonna chip away at hit point, but then like one good hit is gonna take you down. It's gonna have serious consequence. And that's why I say, like people say, oh, you can role play anything, the system doesn't matter. No, I think system fucking matter, because system inform how you're gonna play. You take the same player, and DM James was talking about that, because DM James used to play like a lot of old school role playing game, old school D&D, and now he's running a game of Warhammer Fantasy, and he say like the players interact differently. They don't try to run into every fight, because like fighting is serious. Now they try to talk their way out of it, or they try to think of a plan. I like that. That's what I'm after.
Yeah, and that's what I've accomplished with Pathfinder 2, and as in Pathfinder also, not Pathfinder 2nd edition, Pathfinder 1st edition. I've accomplished that with Pathfinder. The last combat encounter, it started as a fight, and then halfway through, they realized if they kept both sides realized, if we keep fighting, we're going to be fighting to the last man. Crap Phone here says man-to-man combat's deadly and usually quick. Yeah, exactly. If you're fighting in melee combatants range to range, it becomes you can kill me. Can you kill me before I can stab that guy you really care about? Probably not. So are we going to sit here and fight this out, or are we going to parley here? Are we going, and that's another thing. I think people just don't have intelligent creatures, or even, beasts and the like. They don't respond to damage in any sane way. They fight to the last man. They fight.
Most people wouldn't fight to the death. That's true. Even like most beasts, most creatures wouldn't fight to the death. Yeah.
Most military commanders are going to see 3% casualties and go, "Holy crap, we got to get out of here," because they snowball fast.
And even like in ancient battle or in medieval time, like you would get out of a fight, out of combat, like you say, but you wouldn't necessarily be dead. There are a lot of people that would survive. Maybe your career as a fighter is over because now you're missing a leg, or maybe you're
or you have a cool story like Guts von Berlichingen,
where you're missing a hand.
Mhm.
Yeah. But so that brings us back to those lingering injury, and that's something I find
Mhm.
interesting as well. Like maybe if you, and that's something I'm considering now for Winter Dawn as well. Like
Mhm.
if you get incapacitated, like it's a wound system, so it's not really
Mhm.
exactly like 0 HP. But if you're getting
Yeah.
incapacitated, doesn't necessarily mean you die, but you're gonna be you out of the fight for that fight, and you might get like a permanent injury. And then like, well, did you lose a hand? Did you lose a leg?
Yeah.
Did you lose a lung? Maybe that's one as well. You know, like you just got stabbed, you're gonna survive, but you're gonna have like reduced stamina forever.
Yeah, and I like that in games like Pathfinder, like Hackmaster, like Shadowrun, where the games can be fairly lethal, but because it takes so long to make a new character, I don't want, I don't want death necessarily to mean you're dead.
Yeah.
Because I think it can be more interesting to play those sorts of characters that are, missing an arm or missing a
Yeah.
leg or blind or,
If it has consequence as well.
yeah, exactly. Right.
Don't just and wave it, or just like make
Mm,
it make the
yeah.
injury meaningless, because that's part of your character arc. That's part of the character development as well. You know, oh,
Mm,
you were a great fighter. You know, I mentioned a bit earlier, like Jimmy Lannister. You look at that, like he was
mm,
like known for his talent with a sword, and then he loses his sword, and then like he has to reinvent himself. That can be
mhm.
fucking interesting in a role playing
Oh,
game. You know, is
and
your fighter
then,
become yep.
you feel real dumb if you're the guy that was like, "Oh, I'm gonna dump charisma as a fighter," and it's like, okay, well, now you're hobbling around on one leg. What good of a fighter are you, right? You need to be in a more you need to be charismatic, right? You need to be able to get things without beating people up.
Yep.
And it can, in a class-based system, it can create interesting not character builds, but character routes. Maybe next level you go, I've only got one hand. I'm not a wizard anymore. I need both of my hands to cast spells. I can't cast spells anymore. So I'm not taking any more levels in wizard, and that's both a mechanical interest and a flavorful interest, which is, I
Yep.
think they should go hand in hand.
And there's the question too, like, well, maybe you're not dead, but like, yeah, you lost a leg or you lost an arm. Like, is the character retiring? You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you were just like, maybe that's part of the story. So you're not dead per se, but for play purpose, you're still making a new character. That could be one way that it goes.
Yeah.
But if your character still has goals and still has motivation and still want to do stuff,
Mm-hmm.
maybe he's gonna keep on going, and that it becomes something interesting there.
Yeah. And now, maybe you do have the perfectly healthy guys he was just traveling with that are like, yeah, come on, let's go fight him. And he's like, well, wait a minute. I can't, I'm not going to be much help here if we just are, so it's another thing to make you slow down and think.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's also something when you have like a lot of like a restoration magic and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
You lose that experience, it cheapen it. You lose those story arc.
Mm.
What we do when we play our role-playing games, excuse me, we're telling the story of those protagonists. We're figuring out through play what the story of those protagonists is, the interesting part and stuff like that. If there's a solution for every problem they encounter, every story is gonna be the same. Oh, you started at
Yeah.
level 1 and you become like a very powerful guy, and you fought some god at the end, or some demon or some shit.
And that's why clerics are let's talk about the
Healing.
concept of like afterlife now, because
Oh, okay.
this is where clerics get into the problem,
Yep.
because as you were saying, yeah, how bad the injuries are does affect how you play the game. But if you have a system like Pathfinder, you create a situation where even if you tell the players, you don't need to, build a specific party composition. I don't care what you play. You could play all fighters for all I care.
Yep.
The mechanics of the game say something different. The mechanics of the game tell you are going to heal 1/10 of your hit points more or less every night you rest. It's going to be one fight's going to be a week's rest. Or you could have a single person play a cleric in your party and go, woo. And for that reason, you have to have this interaction with the gods that most DMs don't enforce, right? Most of them is just, are you a good cleric and you aren't going around kicking orphans? All right, good. All your powers work. No downside. But
Yeah.
if you're the way that the gods work in D&D, in D20 systems is generally not akin to an omnipotent, all good, all powerful god. They're individuals. They have their own goals, their own things that they want done.
Yep.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll heal your fighter that just got stabbed to near death. I want something from you, though. And that might just be a tithe to the church. It might just be money. It could be as simple as that. Most people don't even do that. But, it might be, okay, for you to be able to prepare your spells again the next day, I need you to do something for me serious. I need you to go on some kind of quest.
Well, oftentimes it's like the proselytism, the spreading of the faith. Fuck.
Yeah, I need you to convert, X. Yeah, you get a quota. It's like, all right, no, I'll heal this. I'll let you heal this guy, but the next time I need you. I expect 5 new peasants worshiping me by the next quarter.
Yeah, convert that fucking fighter to my faith.
Yeah, and it should be like that. The only reason you're alive today is because of my god. That's and that's a thing that just kind of gets hand waved. It's like, oh, he made my numbers go up. It's like,
that's the thing. That's the thing too. Like we talked about like how fast you can die impact the tone a lot, but how fast you can heal does as well. And when you have like those cleric with the healing magic and stuff like that, that's often feel like unsatisfying for me. I like when Charlotte said that's one of the problem I have with Forgotten Realms and modern RPG in general. They act like magic won't solve all their problem. Then the next scene, a magic solution appear anyway. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I would argue they don't even in like 5e they've just stopped acting like magic won't solve all their problems.
Yeah. That's the thing. I'm the low fantasy guy, and that we went on that subject because we thought it was a good continuation from what we were discussing last week, and that's part of it as well. Like, I like when healing takes long time. I like when you get into a fight and you get beaten down. Maybe you're gonna be a week off. Like maybe you're gonna need a week to recover a bit. And the reason I like that is I think when you play and some stuff happens, the world is not on pause when the character is not around. Events keep going, and you have calendar. And the Orcs army walking toward the town. They're gonna be there in 3 weeks. They're gonna be there in 3 weeks. You have stuff to do to get ready before they arrive, or you want to stop them before they arrive and stuff like that. But now you're going to do a fight, and you need maybe a week rest. Well, can you afford a week rest? It gives you this dilemma.
And now you have to think about, what can you do that isn't combat that helps you prepare for the fight? Can you do some really light training to sort of keep yourself active? Can you go around maybe you should seek out
talking to people. Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say, you should seek out information. Go find somebody that knows how this guy fights. Get some tips on him.
But if you go to bed and the next morning you wake up fully ill, you lose that kind of like challenge, that kind of like story. Okay, and sometimes you're gonna say like, you know what, I need to press on. I got like I'm injured and stuff like that, but there's stuff happening. Like somebody needs to be saved. Like the merchant, like he's not gonna be alive in a week. I cannot just like go back and sleep. We're not in fucking Disneyland. We're not. It's not like a theme park. Stuff happened, and the world keep going on. And also like we talked about like permanent injury. There's also like semi-permanent. Like you break your arm, what do? Well, do you go? There's something like that should happen. Oftentimes, like you don't always have to have your arm cut. Sometimes you just like, but now it's gonna take like 6 months. What are you gonna do for 6 months? Well, you still need to make a living. You still need. I don't know how long. I never like a broken arm or broken anything, so I don't know how long they take to heal.
Depends on how much milk you're drinking. That's only kind of a joke. I know my uncle, he's Greek. He ate so much yogurt that he like halved the expected recovery for when he broke his leg.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. But Yeah. Yeah, maybe not permanent, but at least days or weeks of rest. When you
Yep.
get to 0 HP, that is. Clerics having dozens of healing spells a day negates any negative consequences of combat. It
Yeah,
does if you're only having one combat a day. Maybe what this means is that you necessarily need to have more combats in a system or a more injurious environment when there's that much healing going around.
but often
Um,
often with somebody with engaging combat, you know what I mean? At some point, if the solution is have your character like it kind of like change also the kind of like it break the very similar to that bit, you know, like people wouldn't like go pick fight like 12 times a day, you know.
yeah, but if they're being magically restored to full health, and health is
Yeah,
also your stamina, and they're like, oh, I can go again, and you just go into the next room in the dungeon or whatever, and
yeah.
you're already in this bizarre like death trap dungeon where around every corner, the world of D&D is very
But that's the thing
favoring of
also,
Forgotten
like, you know,
Realms is yeah.
if you have like one fight in your day
Hmm.
and then you have like consequence from it and then
Yeah.
you injure and then it was a tough one and you almost died,
Yeah.
this is an impactful fight.
Hmm.
If you have 12 fights in a day, well, each fight is like it's not even like 112 less impactful.
Yeah.
It's like 120. Like, you know, it doesn't scale the same way. Like, now it's right. All right, just like another fight. We're just gonna.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a pretty good one. Oh, that was a
Yeah.
real tough. All right, let's move on to the next fight. You know,
Yeah.
they become like meaningless. You know, and
Mm.
you never have like, this question like, well, like we talked earlier, like, do we want to pick that fight? Can
Yeah.
we do something
I,
else? Can you?
I would say it's not the lingering thing is a problem with clerics, because when they have as much time as they need to, and I would say this is an interesting point where uh balance actually does matter in your game. I am usually a don't don't focus on balancing your game, focus on whatever makes sense.
Mhm.
But here's where balance actually skews what makes sense in your world. So because so in Pathfinder, there's always, if you're gonna min max a character, healing is always worse than damage, because damage removes a threat. It gets
Yep.
rid of a potential threat, whereas healing just delays the inevitable.
Yep.
But after the combat, right, that's where it starts to matter, where it's like, okay, well, now the cleric has infinite time and plenty of resources to heal somebody up. At lower levels, it becomes a real consideration. Does the cleric want to burn their one of 3 first level spell slots to heal the fighter? Well, what if he needs to, cure somebody of a disease? What if he needs to, create some water because we're thirsty, or what have you? But later on, yeah, when you do have a dozen, first level spells, and you can just pump a ton of healing into somebody, now the consideration becomes less on long term and more in the short term. In the combat, maybe these people that are fighting to the death, like, cultists or something, that hate this cleric, that know if this cleric lives through this combat, all of our work's going to be for naught. So we've got to kill that cleric if we want our damage to matter. So now that the flavor doesn't become the long term of the fight, now the flavor becomes, how do we protect our cleric? The problem with this is that clerics can wear fucking heavy armor, and they can fight just as well as anything, and they have as much hit points as like and it's like,
Yep.
that's the balance issue. Is it's like the cleric should be, if you can heal, at the drop of the hat, you should not be as durable as you are. You should be something that's supposed to be protected, right?
What if if we like to say, okay, healing magic, whatever it's
Mm.
cleric, potion, whatever,
Mm.
doesn't give you like a point or heal injury right away, but maybe like double your rate of natural healing. So now instead of like being off for like 3 months, it's like it's like you eat a little yogurt, and now you only eat for like a month and a half. You
Mm.
know?
Yeah, it could be something like that. I would only say, like, in games that also have, the druid and the ranger,
Yeah.
it could kind of clash into like the idea of natural healing.
Yeah.
Maybe though, what
What do you mean?
Crampphone
What do
here
you mean? What
says,
do you mean? The You can clash with the idea of natural eating.
well, like, the sort of like gameplay niche and flavor niche that things are supposed to fulfill. It seems to me more like druidic, that druidic or
No,
ranger
I
magic
mean
that.
natural healing. Like if you're not healing, like if you're not taking anything, any magic or anything, just your regular healing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like the idea of accelerating what the body
Oh
can
yeah.
already do is like more of a druidic, like
Oh, you think
natural,
so?
or yeah, I think so. Whereas a cleric is like drawing power from this otherworldly creature to just stitch your wounds back together magically. Like Crapphone says, clerics should only be able to heal if their deity focuses
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
And then
I would.
sorry, but a cleric of Athena doesn't heal, and it's like, yeah.
It doesn't bother me if a cleric like you just say, you know what, we're gonna do it, like it is gonna, or maybe like you're gonna be out of immediate danger and then you're gonna heal faster. And, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, what if the like to go back with this comment from Armin, if the player set up a safe place to heal with good planning, then I have no problem with the cleric healing them. What if like the healing spell is not something that you can do in one round? Maybe it takes a full minute, or maybe it takes like 10 minutes. Like if you all make them ritual.
Yeah.
Would that solve part of the issue?
Yeah, or you restrict it to just the channel energy, where it's like, okay, I heal in a 30-foot radius, which means if somebody's fighting you, you're right next to him. I'm healing him too. So you can do it that way, where it's like I just sort of, do this, and then healing magic comes around. So we have to position in kind of weird ways, or we need to get to an area where it's just you if you're the only one that needs to be healed here. Something like that.
God in the Runes say, if druids can turn into bears and wizard can throw fireballs, healing is almost never what you should be doing in combat. I think that's mostly true, except which one is a big problem in D&D, especially modern D&D, is the whack-a-mole thing.
Yeah.
Because somebody is fully operational, exactly at 1 HP, you're fully operational. So now, you fall at 0, I'm going to heal you quickly. And also in D&D 5e, everybody fucking got healing.
Yeah.
Healing is so frequent.
And nobody has the way you fix that very quickly is you go, okay, you're now conscious, you are flat on your back on the ground, you've dropped your weapon. As soon as you stand up, somebody just goes, they weren't going to fight you while you were, and this is the problem with very few people are going to knock somebody out, see multiple other threats, and go, I'm going to kill this guy. They're going to knock him out and go, okay, now let me deal with the other threats. So, that's like a stupid DM and stupid player, combination going on there, in my opinion. Yeah. Or, the other case, maybe someone's hand gets cut off in the middle of combat, their arm, sailing off in an arc. The guy's got a two-handed weapon. Maybe you want to heal that guy so he can use his weapon. But, I would typically agree.
Yeah. The Arman say, I played a game last weekend where you could only drink one healing potion a day. Drinking another one will have no effect. That's an interesting limitation.
Or you could go the Witcher route where you can drink a bunch of them, but then you're starting to get build up toxins in the body.
Yeah, or you get addicted, or maybe you're gonna make you sick, have some other kind of effect.
You bought a dodgy healing potion from some,
or maybe healing potion is gonna save your life, but you're gonna feel like nauseated. You're gonna feel under the weather. So
you're not gonna be in fighting condition. Yeah,
exactly. You're not being in fighting condition for the rest of the day, or for it's gonna give you diarrhea. Whatever. Some outcome. Make them not like just work perfectly all the time without any kind of side effect.
Another way, if somebody does find out you're a cleric and you can just multiple times a day wave your hands and somebody's healed, you're going to have to hide that every time you go into a town. Otherwise, you're going to be harassed by every, crippled beggar in 100-mile radius who's going to go you do it for free? Well, you worship a good God, right? You're not an asshole. You're going to heal the whole town no matter how long that takes. So maybe you end up dragging your adventuring party, get stuck in a town for, a week because you've got to heal everyone there. And now, okay, well, maybe the local doctor that does just, stitch people up is like, what the hell? I'm out of business now. I can't. And so you have these conflicts where it's
that's
not
always
death,
something like when magic is like the amount of magic in your world is not taken into consideration. We talked about that last week a bit. And
in a big city there might be 5 or 6 clerics. One of them's just dedicated to healing the sick, and they don't go out and adventure. But if you're adventuring and you're going out in the world, you go to a little village of 100 people, you're probably going to get stuck. And if you worship a truly benevolent, good God, and you decide, no, I'm not going to heal these sick people, I'm going to move on, you're probably not going to be able to prepare your spells the next day. You're probably going to get a stern talking to, depending on how interactive your gods are in the world.
Oh, Justin broke his wrist twice, man. You need a girlfriend.
That's I've heard that things heal better if they're already broken, because the stem cells are active there, and then they sort of learn how to regrow it is the idea. Lots of stuff.
I never broke anything, so
I've jammed my toe. That's about it.
Oh yeah, I broke a toe, but then I just ignore it. I just tape it to the one next.
Same. I just can't bend my left toe anymore.
Guardian of the Rune say it's only outside of combat. That cleric healing breaks the very smooth of the world outside of combat, and over days of downtime, that cleric healings break the very smooth of the world.
Yeah, because
I don't know.
You'd never have any injured people walking around.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Armin say I don't have a problem with magic healing in a world that has a lot of magic. Yeah. I can see that. Magic healing. What I'm saying is that's what I was saying. You're by having healing too easy and restoration too easy. You if it's the world you want to depict, that's fine. But you are taking something away from your world. You are losing some part of story. So that's what I'm saying. That you always I think it's worthwhile to make those considerations. You know what I mean? It's not just it's gonna be a normal world. No, it's not quite gonna be normal anymore. There's gonna be a lot of consideration.
Carphone here has an interesting idea. How about a cleric that can only heal someone that worships the same god the cleric does, where they agree to convert to that worship? Yeah. That would be an interesting.
Well. Doesn't a DCC does that?
Yep. I don't remember if it's exactly that. I've only played Weird Frontiers, which is based on DCC, so I've only looked through DCC, but I believe it's something along those lines. Yeah. And clerical magic is much more strict in its usage, and you get less of it in the day, so you might just not be able to heal everyone. If you've got multiple people injured, you might have to do triage. You might have to go, all right, which one of you needs it the worst? You've got a broken arm, he's got a broken leg, I'm healing the broken leg. We got to walk.
Oh, look at Armin expand there. So if you can fly, are you upset that the cliff is now not a problem and it's taking something away from the world? I am.
Yeah, I am too. As someone who likes higher fantasy, I think not to get us derailed on Flight, but I think Flight is such a huge rabbit hole of disregarding. I mean, think of what Flight on even a mass scale of you can transport 100 people in a plane has meant for modern societies. You're now pretty much no longer playing a medieval Renaissance game at that point.
But for me, I can say I am, but for me that's an easy answer, because I'm a low fantasy kind of guy, and I don't really like magic and stuff like that, because I think it's a too easy an answer for many problems.
Yeah, and my answer is, when you first get third level spells, that's very true. Basically, you have to, like I was mentioning earlier, you have to sort of get back on the right path before you get full access to all your spells again, which is how it's supposed to be run in pretty much every D&D, system that has clerics. But there you go.
Just confirm. Yeah, that's weird.
But at a lower level, your wizard just gets a spell, or your sorcerer just gets a third level spell, and they can pick between Flight or Fireball. Then it's a compelling choice right now, because they have to pick something that's very combat applicable to something that's very utility based,
especially if they have to pick it in advance, at the start of the day, stuff like that.
Yeah. Whereas, or if they're a sorcerer and they have limited options, then they pick one whenever they level up, and that's that's going to be it until they level up again. But later on, when it becomes just you just wave your hands and fly, now you get into this weird, yeah, I get it that high fantasy, the challenges need to be bigger and enemies have a lot of magic as well. But now you get into the shonen problem of what was a fight yesterday, last session, is laughable now. And on a long enough timeline, you start thinking, this fight's are we gonna remember this fight much?
What was it like? That was like over 9,000. Was it Piccolo?
Yeah, and now we're up to like billions and billions. And so it's like, yeah, but if you get so many fly spells a day, and it's just, oh, it's okay early on because maybe just the wizard flies up the cliff.
And it really depends. Like, like I mentioned earlier, like the example of the Diablo, like I like the first one because it was much slower and you would always feel a threat. But this kind of game is almost like disappear. Now every ARPG and the like, or those you just go down and mow down countless enemies. It's depend what you're looking for. It's a matter of feel that you're going for. And of course, if you go with the high fantasy and you want like, it's gonna be a different game. And that's what we're talking about. That's what a big part of what we talked last week, but it's also what we're talking about here when we say like, if you have all this magic and stuff like that, like, something are gonna be like solved and are not gonna be part of your fiction, and that's fine. But if you want to do it in like doing knowingly, that having those big monster with a lot of magic and those different type of problem comes at the cost.
What new problems are created. Don't just solve a problem and then dust your hands off and go, okay, food's no longer a problem because clerics can make food. No, go, okay, so food's no longer a problem. So what problem comes from nobody going hungry? Nobody's gone hungry. Okay, what do your slums look like then? They probably don't look like medieval slums. They probably look a lot more like modern slums. So, but that's a, a little tangent,
Yeah. The next one we should talk about, because it's in the title and we haven't touched really about it, death and the afterlife. And we talked about that a bit, when you die, do you die at 0? Do you die like having this I think like when death is a real threat, when you can die, it makes life meaningful. If death is too easy, or if that is never like if that is never like on the table, you're always gonna risk your life. And now that's the whole fucking thing with the consent and death. Let's not talk about that. It's so fucking stupid.
We're I think pretty much your entire have disappeared.
You lost your camera, man.
It's such a dumb discussion. My camera doesn't want to be a part of it. my camera is plugged in. I don't know what's going on here. But yeah, I think that, pretty much our entire the entire audience here agrees on what is going on. Oh no.
Yeah, I agree with Doodle Squash as well. That's also often sometimes that is not role played quite enough, in my opinion. Cleric should be the party's spiritual guide and could give them bonuses to things like natural healing rate as long as he or she is alive.
Yeah. I'll just keep talking here until my camera decides it wants to be back. It says it's back on and it just isn't. Oh, I see.
What? Almost there. What?
No, that's not
OBS.
Right. There we go.
OBS
it's defaulted to OBS.
Yeah.
And there we go. Now we're back. Okay. I don't know what went wrong there. Afterlife. Yeah. If you're never having to deal with death, usually you're in a game that's fairly high fantasy. With
that's a good one by Crepphone. For the character has to matter. I think that's kind of like
exactly what I was
to circle.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was mentioning earlier. If you make it too easy to die, you don't care about the character. The character doesn't feel like they matter. That's an issue older versions of D&D had.
And if you make it too hard to die, then you think you're invincible and you just like go out strong. So there's like this balance,
and then you create this weird thing where there are clerics, there are all of these planar things in these high fantasies, and there is a consideration of like where do I go when I die? But if that's like a when I die is is an if and not a when, then then it becomes you have to start thinking in different ways. Are there if you become immortal in one of these super high fantasy games, does you should have a goddess of death or a god of death or some entity. It doesn't even have to be in like a human form, but some entity that is you are supposed to die. They send maybe mortal agents after you. Their clerics start to go after you for shunning, for trying to get away from dying so much. Maybe even on a lower scale of things, if you've got a cleric that's just healing the party all the time, maybe you have now this conflict with this sort of death cult that is like, no, these people, all of these fighters and mundane people you keep healing, their time was long, long ago. They aren't supposed to be alive.
And that's the thing also, like, if your character die and then the cleric of the party like bring him back and resurrect him, there's also a consideration like, where did you go when you died? Like if there's an afterlife and stuff like that, because like, and we kind of know that gods are real because there's clerical magic and stuff like that. But I'm Catholic, right? And we're told not to fear death. If you were in good grace with God and you die, well, that's probably like the right thing. That's the best thing that can happen to you in a way. This fear of death and seeing death as a negative is, I think, a very modern and very materialistic problem. People that think that this life is all there is. But if you're in a fantasy setting and there are afterlife and there are God and stuff like that, maybe your character would be, like I always say, your character would probably be pissed off if you die doing something good and you basically die like a martyr, and then you go to your afterlife, you're in heaven basically, and then you're brought back. You say, what the fuck, man?
yeah no, and I had a player die, or not a player die, but a character die, a player playing a character that died for the first time at level 18 in Pathfinder, and they're playing a full caster. So that was pretty like, whoa. Yeah, I got there and I was thinking like, oh yeah, she never has died before, and she worships the goddess of death. That became a thing after, throughout play, as she saw so many people die and come back, she started to sort of reorganize like her beliefs on the death system. And then she dies and sees a psychopomp in Pathfinder, basically like an emissary of death that's supposed to usher the souls to the afterlife.
Yeah, we're talking about character. Player death's a different thing. Like, try to bring them
yes.
back. Somebody like choke on Cheetos at your table. Yeah, maybe you can do some CPR.
Heimlich maneuver, yeah. But no, for what's in the mortal plane, 6 seconds, they have like a minute conversation where they have to think, do I want to come back? Is it, I worship the goddess of death, and now that I've died, I know somebody's going to be on the other side to resurrect me, but is that right? Is that what my God would want here? Am I doing something that's heretical by coming back? And so they had to consider that. And I thought that was interesting. That was an interesting consideration. But yeah, you could also have it as, maybe a character's done nothing but good in their life. Or you're playing, a more Viking, Norse pagan type character where they die honorably in battle, and then some cleric is like, all right, get back up. And they're like, what the hell, man? That was the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's something that should be considered. Like your character, like if you play like in a kind of medieval time, like especially there's magic around and stuff like that, your character would probably like have some kind of spirituality. Yeah. And that's also like a very good point. If being raised from the dead is not life-altering thing for a character, you're playing wrong. That I agree big time.
Yeah.
Maybe you weren't such a good guy, and you got raised from the dead, but where you were dead wasn't a fun place, So now maybe you're glad, but maybe you retired and you say, you know what? I'm gonna spend the rest of my life trying to make up for all my sin. That's something that can be
or you
an interesting part of a role play as well.
Yeah, you keep adventuring or whatever, but now you're you're donating a lot more to the church or people in need whenever you're in town, or it gives the character a reason to
and you stop being
turn
like a murder robo, like, or just
yeah.
Armin was saying, like, I'm not arguing for anything, because he mentioned a lot about high fantasy. This kind of areas become injury and healing in a low fantasy setting. I think we focus a lot in low fantasy setting.
Yeah, now
maybe it's because of my interest, but also because of because in high fantasy, it's kind of like waved off. It's kind of like it's kind of solved. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Is in high fantasy, I mean, I guess I could have done a better job of saying, if 1d8 plus 5 healing from a cure light wounds, is that going to grow your arm back? No, probably not. So yeah, you're at full health, but you're still missing your arm. So thank you for bringing that up, because linking the low fantasy injuries to a high fantasy setting, if you get hit with a sword and it cuts your arm off, that is a problem in a low fantasy setting, and it's a problem in a higher fantasy setting.
Depending on the level of magic. If you got like restoration, and you can just like, what if that would happen? You can get healed through magic. You're gonna get your HP back, but then the wound is cauterized, and you have no chance of reattaching the arm. By any means. Like, now the arm is gone. So you have the choice to make. Do I want to get my HP back and say goodbye to my arm? Do I keep going without the arm? Do I keep going without the HP, and maybe then we can go back to town, I can get my arm fixed up? Those could be like interesting dilemma you can introduce.
Yeah, because if it's just like, pure, I just sort of shoot positive healing juice into you, it's just kind of like, it's not, it's not surgical, it's not targeted, it's just going to be like, all right, there you go, you're all, and it's just sort of a useless mass. You get a stump, or it heals your broken bone, but just in whatever position it happens to be in. So it's like, great, you're at full health, but now your arm's stuck all in that position.
Because that's the thing, like, if you want to, the higher fantasy you go, the less injury and matters. So and every time we're gonna try to say, like, how can we make like injury meaningful and impactful in a high fantasy setting, it's always gonna be, I feel, in a way that, well, you kind of have to limit magic. Isn't that,
you have to limit magic, or you have to have magic have a drawback?
That's a big thing as well. Like, are you gonna get some HP back, but those HP have to come from someone else? Maybe
you get healed, and now every time you sleep or close your eyes, you're going to be harassed by visions from this god, or what have you. But on the resurrection sort of thing, there's another problem that at a certain point, the resurrection becomes, hey Crispy.
Crispy.
The resurrection becomes it becomes a fiscal cost. It becomes an economic cost, where you get resurrected in a modern system, let's say 3rd edition on D&D onwards. It becomes, okay, well, you need to pay X amount in materials. Sure, it's diamond dust or whatever. It's materials, it's magic materials. But functionally, what it means is your character's life is worth 5,000 gold. What kind of world morals does that build? You're not worth as much as a +2 sword. Like, economically, we can prove that your life is materially not worth as much as a +2 longsword.
So you think you should be like some state-funded resurrection system?
Well, I mean, like, there would be people going around suggesting,
promoting that.
Come on, man! You think his life's not even worth a +2 sword? Come on, resurrect him, man! Like, what the hell? And so you've got all these. Maybe the reason that the cleric's adventuring is because they're flat broke, because it's like, well, I've got a good god, I've got to resurrect all the people I can, but I don't have any money. I just, every time someone's, dog gets run over by a wagon, they come like, oh, it's like.
But then also it lead to the question, like, why would he resurrect those people? Like, if
Yeah, exactly. And then you get into the like, okay, well now they're spending all their time auditing people and figuring out, what ills have you done in life, and okay, well maybe, and they have to do triage, and
Yeah.
it becomes a much bigger mess than wave your hand, resurrect a guy when it's no small sum of money. But again, when it becomes a big sum of money, or when it is a small sum of money, and it's just, oh no, we're not. I guess we're not going to get that +2 longsword. Oh well,
Yeah. And also,
resurrect
it's
the
also
guy.
like economics in D&D is always like fucking fucked.
Yeah, it's always a mess.
Yeah.
What Charlotte says earlier, 1 AD&D had
Yeah.
consequences for resurrection,
Yeah.
and even in second edition, uh, you could only be resurrected according to your Constitution modifier.
Yeah.
Once you're resurrected that many times, that was it.
Yeah.
So it became, okay, here's a redo. But once you're on that last life, you're kind of like, do I want to keep adventuring? I don't know. I've already died like 4 times. I don't know if this is worth it anymore.
But
Um,
if you do that that kind of mindset, does it imply that the character was going into danger just because, well, you know what, if I die, I'll get resurrected? You know what I mean? There's that as well.
maybe there's people like that in the real world. They damage their health and they go. There's people that get addicted to crack and whatnot that are like, well, I'll just go to a rehab clinic if I get
Well,
addicted, or
socialized medicine. So
yeah, that too. And, that's reasonably something you could think about with
they don't bear the consequence of their bad life decision.
yeah, because I mean, you think about it, the healthcare in a high fantasy system would be way better. You're telling me there's like little to no chance of medical malpractice? The guy just waves his hand and you're healed all of a sudden? Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, if IRL you brought me a sword that's like auto aligning and gonna go through steel, no problem. Yeah, I'd say.
So what do you think about resurrection? Like, for me personally, like, I don't like resurrection because I think it's cheap and dead. And like I said, there's like too much consideration, like narrative consideration regarding resurrection that I found out.
Yeah, because if you do put a price on it, now you have to think, why do kings ever die? Just every time you resurrect them. So I think you need to have resurrection with the explicit, if they die of old age, if it's their time, it's their time. You'll resurrect them and maybe they have another month to live, maybe they have another few weeks to live, but you're not going to get
That could be an
suddenly
interesting one. You cheat death,
that
so now you bring back, but you're cursed. Like, like
I-
you're gonna something is gonna try to get you, like in the.
I have a custom resurrection effects table for my Pathfinder game that I'm also gonna put into my own game. Yeah, the different levels
that's a different thing.
of resurrect spells as well. There's a
I'm
cool
not.
one.
I don't. This one, like if somebody like just died and you wanna like the body's still warm, I don't have as much a problem with it. But
yeah, there's a cool one in Pathfinder, which is druids can reincarnate people, so they can resurrect you, but it takes a little while. And yeah, you might end up as a woman. You might end up going from a human to a gnome. You might, and who knows what ends up happening to you after it. Yeah, there's an argument for that.
That's very true. Like I talk about that because like magic is very reliable and stuff like that. So it does become just technology.
You have to think about it, right? When very basic things, the invention of screws changed industry a pretty huge amount. Magic is going to change the way the world works quite a bit. That's kind of what we talked about last week, though. But specifically with resurrection, if you can resurrect, all of a sudden, assassins that are going after kings. Well, do they need the whole body to resurrect the king? All right, I'm going to cremate the guy. Do they need just anything? Okay, well, now I'm going to cremate the guy and I'm going to scatter his ashes to the sea. If they just need to know he exists, if it's like super powerful, like true resurrection, then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to need to like put a curse on this guy or something so that if he does come back, he's as good as dead. He can't run his kingdom, whatever. Maybe assassins aren't very popular for this sort of thing. You'd rather kidnap the king and just keep him away because it's harder to find the dude than it is to just wave your hands and go, dang, a 20,000 gold loss. That's really going to hit our pocketbooks this quarter. Then, you know, who would be an assassin in that world where, you know, you hit the economy, but they find you and kill you? Like, that's,
and then you get resurrected by your boss because you get like
and then
you get like a death insurance.
Yeah, and you're stuck in this infinite loop back and forth where it's just, can you whittle down the funds of this other guy before they come back? Maybe you have a guy that's adventuring because he is really rich and he doesn't actually have many skills, but he's like, you know, I've lived a too peaceful life. I'm in it for the adrenaline. I need a rush.
You even have like those spell like I forgot the name of the spell. You have a clone of your body in a jar, and if you die,
simulacrum, and and then, you know, you're going back. I like handling those as, you know, you make a copy of a copy of a copy. Eventually, you know, the second one's missing an arm, the third one's missing, you know, 2 or 3 points of int, you know, the fourth one's you know, and so on.
It's like a multiplicity.
Yeah. And also, you know, with this resurrections table I have, if you have a goddess of death,
that's very like unsatisfying storytelling.
Yeah. And if you have a goddess of death, you know, and somebody's just getting resurrected over and over again, Pathfinder 2nd edition handles this, but it handles it in a very lazy way, which is just the GM can at any time decide that the goddess of death says, nope, it's your time, and the character's dead, and the resurrection spell doesn't work.
Yeah.
Sure.
Dying, like having strokes.
Yeah.
But then it changed the tone of the game.
But you know that the flavorful part of that works, but the gameplay mechanic is really unsatisfying because it could feel like, you know, now your player's going to be like, oh, you're just targeting me. You just don't want to see me play this character anymore. What the hell? So instead, I've got it as a role. You know, eventually the roles get worse and worse the more you're resurrected. Maybe you get resurrected and something good happens to you just off of the touching, you know, the other side, and you bring some good with it. But the more times you die, the more and more your soul, whatever makes you up, is getting corrupted more and more. You know, like saving a JPEG over and over again, and you know, eventually you're no good, and eventually the goddess of death is going to go, come on, dude, you're not coming back.
Crafonte, I think it would make a great dystopian future role-playing game based on the idea that government auditor decide whether you're valuable enough to resurrect. That's not future. Well, it's a dystopia, but it's not future. It's called Canada today. So.
Well, and Chicago, you know, Chicago hospitals have gotten caught for not resuscitating people that were totally fine because they were organ donors, and they went, oh, we could resuscitate the guy, but we need a liver.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know. In your dystopian I think there should be more dystopian high fantasy settings, right? You know, even in Pathfinder, people think, you know, Pathfinder, because of who runs it now, is all butterflies and rainbows, but it's like, no, you've got a level 19th wizard that is he runs a dictatorship country as a god, because he goes, you know, to your average person, what difference am I to a god? As an incredibly powerful wizard. And, you know, if wizards can also resurrect people in addition to your clerics, then this creates a sort of interesting thing where it's like, okay, what is the upside and downside to both, right?
Yeah. Rex still saying, in my setting, attempting to resurrect someone would be a blasphemous act. Instead of it bringing the dead loved one, it brings something else from the other side.
And that's
almost like the Pet Cemetery, kind of like a idea. I like that.
And that's why I was mentioning, like, maybe the wizard reincarnating someone, or the simulacrum, maybe it functionally works, but it's not the same. You know, you've made like some sort of golem or homunculus.
Like our men say, the corruption of rising from the dead could be that you thought you're alive again. Part of you are dead. Could be gross.
Yeah, like Weird Frontiers, the Dungeon Crawl Classics thing has like if all of your characters die in the funnel, you can come back as a I forget what the classes are called, but one of them is basically Death. The Sharon, the emissary of Death, decides to send you back, but now you've got okay. You need to bring other people to. You're basically a hitman now. You get to stay alive as long as you are going after people who are past their time, and bringing them to death. Or you can just come back as a zombie and you have like horrific. Nobody's gonna want to interact with you any close because yeah, you're alive, but your body is just decomposing as you're there. And of course, the longer you played,
or maybe you're alive, you come back with all your HP, but now you don't have natural healing anymore.
Jojo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5 does that. Yeah, there's one of the characters gets narrowly avoids death, and the way it's shown is really cool because you're like, I thought they just died, but in the next scene they're just up and walking around, and you're like, oh, I guess it was near death then. And the next time they get cut, no blood comes out. You're like, oh, what is going on here? It's a really cool scene.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover on that topic, on those kind of like wide, like kind of 4 topics wrapped into one?
Yeah, I think the like general thing we've mentioned is like tone is important, and because of that, like with everything, my cop-out answer is always going to be have a session 0, have a good session 0, right? Because you, as much as I do want death to happen and I do want things to be lethal, I want to, because you want to keep players on their toes, you want to make that clear that that can happen. So, you know, a stray bullet doesn't suddenly blow off somebody's, you know, Shadowrun character that took 2 hours to make's head. And then they're like, what the hell, man? And it's like, well, sorry, that's the game.
That's something we didn't talk about much. Guns.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Injury from guns. Like, that's something oftentimes, like, people, like, when you introduce guns in a role-playing game, people got this idea that, oh, guns should deal like a shit ton of damage because guns are very lethal and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Yeah. Because you get hit by an axe in the face, you know, you're gonna die.
Very, very early firearms, this was true because we have old, you know, 1400s where the field surgeons are going, I know how to deal with an axe wound. I know how to deal with the sword. I don't know how to deal with a gunshot wound. So gunshot wounds were much more deadly when they're during their advent because you had way more infection.
Exactly. Not in fight.
Yeah, not necessarily. No. Well, I mean, if we're talking a little bit later with like the big muskets with like 70 caliber round balls, that's a huge bullet traveling that like that. Yeah, if that hits you, you're pretty much dead. But, or, you know, ballistically amputated, you know, like we mentioned, that should be, you know, a consideration is ballistic amputation is
because nowadays, like, you know, let's say like in a modern setting, like 2 days, and you can choose between being shot by a handgun, like a 9mm, let's say, at 20 feet, or being hit in the face by an axe.
Oh, get shot by the 9mm every single time. Mainly because I'm really skinny, so even if it was a hollow point, it wouldn't have like enough time to expand. It would just, it just go straight through, and then I'd be fine. But if the axe hits me in the shoulder and the 9mm hits me in the spine and paralyzes me for life, I'd rather be hit by the axe. So it's more of a locational thing, right? But if you're in the range to be swung at with an axe, the axe is much more likely to hit you. Most people are terrible shots. If you take your average, you know, like random, you know, gang shooter, they have a 10% accuracy rating.
Man, you got like people like 50 Cent that said, "Oh, I got fucking shot 50 times and survived." You know, you had those skills kind of like I don't know, like many people like got like swung like 50 times, like cut 50 times with a sword or a knife.
Well, because the thing
knife fights are very fucking deadly.
You can get because the thing is, if you get stabbed once, you're probably going to get stabbed again and again and again. If you get shot once, well, the magazine's limited. If you got a musket and an early firearm. It's just one. they shoot you once and miss, or they hit you, you know, in the hand or something. Oh, now your hand's blown off, but you're still alive, and now hopefully you or one of your friends in the shock and panic can just go kill that guy while he's reloading his musket. I don't think reload times are long enough in most games, but you know, also you're already at a distance. You can run behind cover pretty quickly. When you're at the distance to be stabbed, you know, now it's up to, are you faster than them? Can you physically run away from them? Are they not holding you? Are you a better grappler than them? Which we should talk about at some point.
Yeah, and you know, like we have this thing like when people are in serious knife fight, they say like they usually say like, you know, one of the loser is gonna die there on the street, and the winner is gonna die in the ambulance.
Yeah, or one of us ends up in the ground, one of us ends up in the hospital. Is because I mean that's the thing, you know, if you get into a fist fight, you're going to get punched. If you get into a knife fight, you're going to get stabbed. That's just
Craphone say about early firearm, like low muzzle velocity, soft lead, catastrophic damage, even compared to a 7.62.
And when you've got, you know, one of those big
yeah, exactly, that's what I was saying too. Like, they were like
you're way more likely to hit a bone. And when you do ballistic amputation, that you send all these bone fragments everywhere and tons of chance for infection. And then what gunpowder is made of, the unburnt powder coming with it, you know, it's not good to have sulfur and all of these different compounds in your body either.
And lead.
Lead, if it somehow managed to stick in your body.
But at the same time, getting hit by a sword, getting hit by an axe, by a pole arm, you know, that's that's not a good.
And you know, we very early on, you know, the word bulletproof dates back to the 1600s. They had bulletproof full plate pretty early on. So I would fear a dagger much more than a gun if I was in bulletproof full plate, or a guy, you know, full bore on a charger with a lance. A lance will kill you.
With a horse,
out.
We agree that guns, oftentimes, like there are a big debate about injury that guns should do. I think they should be treated as other weapon.
They should.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fine if you have a gun doing a little bit more damage than something else. That's okay, especially if it's an early firearm, because they are a little gnarly. But they shouldn't be doing like twice as much damage as, you know, as a sword is, or anything crazy like that. We already talked about crits, but I think in a lot of systems, crits with guns are treated as worse, and I think that's fine. because if a gunshot does hit something, you're not just going to have the sort of shearing easy force. It disintegrates franges and all of that.
Oh yeah, you have to check yourself there, Tyler, because you're skinny. That particle usually get absorbed by fat. That's what only really affect the young and the old. Man, we are learning medical stuff today.
Yeah, no, that's very true. There's some interesting cases where somebody perfectly healthy but fat starts like a keto diet or something, and then they get really skinny. They burn a lot of fat, and it turns out all of the toxins that were, you know, from like a lead mine, or, you know, or just in their water or whatever, all of a sudden they get released in the fat.
Craphone go with a different direction there. Ragged, unsuitable, exit wound, 0.7 or 0.8 caliber round. I'll take the axe, especially if it's sharp. Yeah, you're gonna suffer less. You're not gonna survive more.
That's very true. But you know, because if somebody's I mean, I guess that sort of depends, right? You know, if I also have if I'm in axing range, I have a better chance of defending myself. If somebody is shooting at me, well, my winding and binding and my grappling isn't going to help me if I'm being shot at from 20 feet away. Right?
Another thing we didn't talk about: role playing your injury. We didn't talk. We should fucking talk about that. We didn't talk.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Even if there's no mechanical limitation in the game, does it become like if there's no limit and the player just start acting like, oh man, I'm fucking hurt, I cannot do that, and even though like there's no mechanic, do you like that, or you just say like, well, you know what, that's not the game we're playing. You know, there's no.
I like it because the mechanic is if you want to think, the mechanic is I only get one or two more of those before I'm dead. So you should, that would help it before, and you can start playing playing it off as, oh yeah, I'm the tough guy, I'm gonna power through the wounds, oh no, it doesn't hurt for me, and then all of a sudden you just drop dead. That can be a way to represent lethality better in those it can be more of a shock when it does happen, where it's like, oh crap, that guy was perfectly fine, and he just, all right, should we be more cautious? Because apparently it's a lot easier to die than we thought it was.
Yeah, I would say like don't overdo it though. Don't like
Yeah.
don't start making a big show out of it.
Because if you're doing it every single time you get damaged, and you usually will get damaged pretty frequently, then it's gonna get old.
Yeah. All
But
right.
I do like role playing like location specific injuries. Going back to that, if there isn't a location, like a hit location thing, right?
Yeah, Craftphone say role play your wound, me, loud scream and whimpering, and I won't stop. Yeah. At some point, like you don't want it to become like distracting, but I can see like especially if you're halfway point and say, man, I just fucking got my ass kicked there. Like I don't want to go back there. I don't want to go. I'm done.
At one point, I really played it up at some point because there was some NPC that got injured, and they're trying to get like quick information out of the NPC. They don't have time or the resources to heal him. I can't remember what the situation was, but they're talking with the guy who's suffered like a minor injury, but I'm like, oh, this is some like random footman. He's not as in like a foot soldier, but a messenger, and he's just gotten hit by an arrow. He's got and they're just like, shut up, man, it's not that bad. So it can be, there can be times to play it up.
It tells you something about the character for sure.
Yeah.
It's a way to characterize somebody, and also like remember part of the role play as well, like running away or surrendering. It's also part of role playing your injury. You get your ass kicked at some point. You don't want to die. Your character wants to survive. So,
and it can be people in the self-defense industry will often say like, oh, if you get, going back to knife fight, little bit of a tangent, but it's related, I promise. We'll say, you get into a knife fight, oh, you're not going to win, you're just going to get stabbed, none of this works, so just run away. Okay, well, what if you have a family? What if your adventuring party or people you really care about and you're about to die?
It's even easier because your kids probably like run slower than you.
Yeah, you trip your, you hip toss your wife. First, she creates a road blockage, and then
wife can be replaced. Your life, you only got one.
You can always have more kids. No, but if your adventuring party is a group you really care about, you have that like, am I going to turn my back and just run out of here and leave? Maybe I'm in full plate. Maybe I'm not likely to get injured again. I'm not likely to take the second hit. That wizard in the back that's got, he's just wearing clothing. If I make a beeline for the trees, is he just going to get killed for it? Or maybe it tells you something about the company. It tells you something about the company you keep when the first time things are starting to look rough. One of the guys in your party just bolts, and you're like, all right, well, if that guy does come back, we know, don't trust him as far as you can throw him because he's not in use in combat.
Yeah. Justin, I think beats like this new wife smell. So I think it's time we should wrap it up. I think that was a good conversation we had. We want to do like a little like summary of the conclusion we drew tonight.
Yeah. If you're in low fantasy, your wounds, your damage should have consequences over the long term. In higher fantasy, the fact that it is difficult to have long-term wounds, that should have a different sort of consequence in the world, in the sort of struggles that people have, or the wound consequences should be as a result of the magical healing or whatever you have. Maybe that comes at a cost. If you do have resurrection in your games, you need to think about what that means. Likewise for the world, do you have kings that are ruling for hundreds of years because they can't be, it's super difficult to kill them? What's the What does that sort of stuff look like? If you don't have resurrection and you have a more grounded thing where death really does matter, that's also great. But now you need to take into consideration, do people not get attached to their characters because it's too easy to die? I think that's most of it.
Yeah, I think if you want the world to feel real, and if you want to have like this sense of danger, and that you want your players to think for the character and not just like throw their character into danger all the time, I think you gain something from having like injury takes longer to heal, be a little more serious and stuff like that. I think if you go the IO fantasy route, you do lose also some type of storytelling that can happen, like with those character arc that can change because of injury and stuff like that, or because of death, or because of near-death experience, or because of resurrection. So I think this is something interesting to consider if you want to go the route of high fantasy. Yeah, that, like you said, that means other kind of like consideration take into account. Next week, we're going to be in October. So obviously we're going to talk about horror. So we're going to try to figure out like ways to do like a horror. Can you say it? I cannot say that word.
Horror.
That's going to be fun next week.
Yeah.
I have a week to learn to pronounce horror. That was popular. That's not too bad.
No, that was better, yeah.
How to do horror right.
Hopefully I never have to pronounce anything in French, so you don't have to make fun of me too.
I wouldn't dare. First episode in October is about pumpkin spice.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh God, I've started thinking in French.
No, so we're gonna talk about horror next week at the same time at 2000 EDT on this channel, and simultaneously stream
on my channel, which is what he was about to say, which is the much better channel and the one you should all be watching on and subscribing to. Okay, wow, I've got a lot of time to plug my own. There we go.
I hope you did. So yeah, subscribe to Tyler's channel. Yes. Saturday, I'm gonna have a talk with Crispy that showed up earlier on the. We're gonna talk about his journey about trying to improve himself as a game master and trying to get some more of the game, of the hobby. So I think that's gonna be an interesting talk. It's gonna be Saturday on this channel at I think we said at 1800 EDT, so 6 p.m. Did we agree on 6 p.m. Eastern time, Crispy, or did we say 8? I think we said 8 in the end. I'll make the stream a little early, so you have time to adjust. What you have coming up, Tyler?
What I have coming up, I am in the process of rebuilding my computer because I've got a new SSD and my computer is just friggin', it's 7 years old. It's a ship of Theseus. It's got a bunch of old parts, bunch of new parts, and I need to rebuild it. So slow uploads, but I plan on talking about bandits and thieves guilds being kind of stupid in most games. I think the next video I'm going to come up with is weapons in non-permissive environments, because nobody talks about, the sight of a group of bloody, armed to the teeth adventurers showing up to a new town, and the guards go, "Oh, come on, come right in." Nobody thinks twice about that, and it leaves a lot of like character concepts and combat opportunities untouched. And also, what can we take from video games? And I actually starred a Guardian of the Rune comment here that I wanted to plug for a video that I'm going to make. Which is fighting dragons or any giant creature should involve crippling the target first before you can deal a decisive blow. On that note, I wanted to talk about what video games get right that we can take into tabletop RPGs, because there's not a lot, and I feel like a lot of wrong is taken from video games.
That's an interesting take, because we often like go from the other direction.
Yeah, but if you look at games like Dragon's Dogma and Shadow of the Colossus, I think
Yeah.
they handle fighting big boss monsters way better than most tabletop RPGs do, right? Yeah, you're not just going to hack at its ankle. You're going to climb on it. You're going to try to get to the neck. You're going to, get to those points,
That's what I was
think-
thinking about when we were talking earlier about like fighting a dragon. You should set up
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Mm.
Yeah, I had like Shadow of the Colossus in mind.
Yeah, exactly. So look forward to those things, and then some more specific, which you guys might not be as interested in. I'm going to do a review of the Elephant in the Room supplement for Pathfinder First Edition, and a wider discussion about feats, because the Elephant in the Room supplement is feats. It's all about feats because they're
Some
kind
people
of
are really into feats, so.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody that watched live, and thank you for everybody that watched on the replay later. If you think we missed something, or if you want to give your specific take of how you like to deal with injury and damage and stuff, and death and resurrection in your game, let us know down below. We check the comments and we try to reply to them. And it also have the algorithm, not gonna lie. So thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you on Saturday. Tyler will see you sometime this week when his PC is built. And we'll see you next week, hopefully. Take care and have a good time. Bye.
See ya.